welcome to Brewing Success, where growth is the mission, change is the reward, and progress is the goal. I am your host, Andrea Gebhardt. I'm a former educator turned passionate entrepreneur whose desire to create impact has never wavered. I have spent the last decade teaching, mentoring, and coaching people on how to create success in their lives and businesses with proven strategies and systems that not only bring about change, but big results. When it comes down to it, teaching is my specialty, leadership is my jam, and inspiring you to live a bigger, fuller life is what I'm all about. This podcast will give you the knowledge and tools you need to brew success in almost any area of your life. You're going to walk away each week feeling inspired, motivated, and ready to step outside your comfort zone and into the next level of who you're meant to be. Now let's get into today's episode. I want to kick off this episode talking to the person who already knows, not the person who's still figuring out direction and not the person who is in the early stages of clarifying the vision. I want to talk to the person who has been doing this long enough to know exactly what they need to do next and who, for reasons they could explain if pressed, have not yet done it at the level that it requires. You know the gap. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You can see it. You probably even have named it in your journal or in a conversation with a mentor in a quiet moment when the noise settles and the honest accounting begins. You know what the next level requires, and you know which habits needs to shift, and you know which actions need to increase. You know. And yet, here you are. Not because you're lazy, not because you lack vision or desire or the fundamental capacity to do what the next level requires, but because knowing and doing are not the same thing. And somewhere between the clarity of knowing and the discipline of doing, something keeps softening the urgency. Something keeps making tomorrow feel like a reasonable substitute for today. So today we are going to name that something, and we're going to replace it with something far more useful. Welcome to Brewing Success, you guys. I'm your host, Andrea Gebhardt, and today we are talking about what it means to push. Not as a feeling, not as a motivational moment, but as a framework for the kind of focused, intentional, habit-shifting action that actually moves the needle when the next milestone matters most. This is not about working harder. This is about working with precision. This is a profound difference. And by the end of the episode, you're going to understand exactly what that difference looks like in your life, in your habits, and your results. So let's go. When most people decide that they're going to push themselves, they reach for the most obvious lever available. More hours, more effort, more hustle, more output. The assumption embedded in that instinct is that the gap between where they are and where they want to be is a volume problem. That if they simply do more of what they have already been doing, the results will follow. But it doesn't really work that way. Here is what that assumption misses. If you were already doing what was sufficient to produce the results you wanted, you would already be there. Doing more of an insufficient action does not make it sufficient. It makes you busier and more exhausted while the gap remains largely unchanged. Hello, burnout. So a true push, when someone says push yourself, you have to push yourself. When you're hearing, I've got to push myself, a true push is not a volume increase. A true push is a precision intervention. It is the identification of specific habits, actions, and behaviors that are either absent, inconsistent, or insufficiently executed, and the deliberate, urgent decision to shift them. That is what PUSH stands for. Positive, urgent shift in habits. 4 words, 1 framework, and a completely different relationship with what it means to push yourself toward a goal. And before we go further, I want to establish something important. A push is a season. It is not a permanent state of being, and it is not a personality type. The person who is always in a push, who treats every week as a sprint, every season as a crisis, every goal as requiring maximum intensity at all times, is not pushing. They are burning, and oftentimes the candle at both ends. And burning isn't a strategy, it's a countdown to self-implosion, a countdown to breakdown, and a countdown to sitting on what I like to call the quitter shitter. A push is a season defined, deliberate, and time-bound. It has a beginning, a clear objective, and an endpoint. You enter it with intention, you execute it with precision, and you exit it having closed a specific gap or reached a specific milestone. Then you consolidate, recover, and prepare for the next one. Understanding this changes everything about how you approach the work ahead. You're not signing up for a new permanent baseline of exhaustion, but you are entering a deliberate season of elevated, focused action in service of a specific outcome. That framing alone makes the push more sustainable and far more effective. So let's break down what each letter means so you're equipped not just with the knowledge, but with the blueprint to building during a push season. So when I say the shift must be positive, I'm not talking about attitude. I'm not asking you to smile through every difficulty or manufacture enthusiasm that you don't feel. Positivity in the context of this framework is a directional word. It means the shift that you're making moves you towards something, toward a goal, toward a milestone, toward a better version of your habits or your output, rather than simply away from something you no longer want. This distinction matters enormously in practice. A push driven by avoidance, by the fear of falling behind or the anxiety of compression, the desperation of a looming deadline, it produces a very different quality of action than a push driven by pursuit. Avoidance-driven action is reactive. It's emotionally expensive, and it tends to collapse the moment the threat recedes. Pursuit-driven action, however, is generative. It draws energy from the vision rather than draining it through fear. So the first question your push season must answer is not what you are running from, but what are you running toward? What is the specific, concrete, compelling outcome that this push is designed to produce? Name it. Write it down. Put it somewhere you'll see it every single day for your push season, because it is the thing that will sustain you when the urgency of the early days fade and the discipline has to carry the weight. A positive shift in habits is an additive shift, one that introduces, increases, or elevates a behavior that moves you towards your target. It's not simply the removal of a bad habit, though it kind of might be part of it, but it is the deliberate installation of a new or elevated practice that did not exist at its current level before the push season began. So if you were to ask yourself, what habit, if I performed it with greater frequency, greater consistency, or greater quality during this push season, would have the most direct impact on the outcome I am pursuing? That habit, that one that you just identified, that's your positive shift. That is where the push begins. So remember this, a push without a positive direction is just pressure. And pressure without direction produces cracks, not breakthroughs. So let's talk about the U, urgency. Urgency is the antidote to eventually. Eventually is the most dangerous word in the vocabulary of an ambitious person. Eventually, I will be consistent. Eventually, I will make the call. Eventually, I will implement that system, have the conversation, make that investment, take the risk. Eventually. Eventually has no address. It exists in a permanently deferred future that never quite arrives because there's always a more pressing today or pressing matter that takes precedence over it. And that gap, the one that you can see, the one that you know exists, the one between where you are and where you intend to be, widens quietly in the space that eventually occupies. Urgency is the direct and deliberate replacement of eventually with now. Not with panic, not with the frenetic energy of someone who has waited way too long and is now scrambling, but with the calm, clear, non-negotiable decision that this shift happens in this season with this level of commitment beginning now, beginning today. Here's a nuance we're sitting with. Manufactured urgency, the kind that comes from artificial deadlines or external pressure, is real but fragile. It works as long as the external pressure is present, and it tends to dissolve when it lifts. The most durable urgency is internally generated. It comes from a clear-eyed understanding of what the delay is actually costing you. And so when we talk about push, positive urgent shift in habits, this is where urgency really comes into play, and why understanding that the shift has to be urgent, has to be now. Because the delay is costing you. The delay is always costing you something. Every week you operate below the level your push season requires is a week of compound growth you are not accumulating. A relationship you are not building, a credibility you are not establishing, a version of yourself you are not yet becoming. When you make those costs visible, when you stop treating the delay as neutral and start treating it as expensive, urgency becomes not a feeling you manufacture, but a reality you can no longer ignore. So what is the delay costing you? By you not taking action, not taking the risk, not starting today, not doing it now, not making the shift now, what is it costing you? Name it specifically, not abstractly, specifically. That specificity is what transforms urgency from a concept into a catalyst. I want to share a final note on urgency. Speed without direction produces chaos, not progress. I know this one all too well. Urgent action inside a push season is always tethered to the positive direction established in the first letter. You're moving fast and you're moving towards something. The urgency accelerates the positive shift. It does not replace the precision of it. So now let's move on to the letter S for shift. A shift is a shift, a small adjustment, not a complete overhaul. It is not the burning down of everything you've been doing and the construction of an entirely new approach from scratch. That kind of radical reinvention sounds compelling in a motivational speech, right? But tends to collapse within 2 weeks of real life because it asks you to abandon all existing momentum in exchange for a clean slate that really has no traction yet. A shift is a deliberate adjustment, specific, measurable, and targeted at the precise place where your current approach is falling short of what your goal requires. It's the identification of 2 or 3, not 10, 2 or 3 behaviors that, if elevated or altered during this push season, would produce a disproportionate impact on your results. Think of it this way. If your progress toward a goal were a car, a shift is not a new car. A shift is the recalibration of a specific components that are limiting your current speed, like the tire pressure, the alignment, or the fuel quality. You're not rebuilding the vehicle, you're optimizing it for the terrain ahead. So let me share with you exactly how to identify what your shift needs to be. There's 3 diagnostic questions that will help you identify your shift with precision. So first, where is your gap the widest? Between your current results and your goal, which specific area shows the greatest distance? That area is almost always where the shift is needed most. So when you think about where you are, your current results, how much weight you've lost, how many sales you've done, how much revenue that you've brought in. When you think about your current results and then your goal, the gap, what's going to show the greatest distance? Well, if I want to increase my revenue, what do I need to do? If I want to increase my sales, what do I need to do? If I want to lose 5 more pounds, what do I need to do? That's going to show you where the shift is needed most. Second, what are you doing inconsistently that if you actually did consistently would change the outcome? The thing about inconsistency is that it's almost always the loudest signal in a push season diagnostic. The behavior you already know you need to perform, but you're performing it only when it's convenient, only when you're motivated, and only when everything else is handled first. That behavior, that is your shift. Third, what you are avoiding What are you avoiding that you know you should already be doing? Like, what are you avoiding? Avoidance is a reliable compass. I always say this. It almost always points directly at the thing that would matter most. Not because discomfort equals virtue, but because the things worth avoiding are usually things worth doing. And I always say that whatever you avoid or avoiding, whatever action you are avoiding is actually creating the void that you are trying to fill. Let me give you an example. You know that if you want to be healthier and maybe get some blood work in check, or maybe like work on your overall health in general, we'll just call it that you need to cut back on, reduce, or eliminate sugar from your diet. So you know that's what you need to do, but you're avoiding it because it's hard and it sucks and you like cookies and ice cream and little treats. But because you haven't done it, you've avoided it, your insulin resistance, your low energy, your cravings are still these relentless cycling, monsters in your system that are causing you to then now think about what you need to do. So it's like this vicious cycle, really. In your business, whatever it is that you're avoiding is the very thing you need to do to fill the void. Man, I want my business to grow. Okay, well, stop avoiding talking to people. Stop avoiding selling. Stop avoiding getting new customers, getting new clients, reaching out. Stop avoiding those things. You want to succeed? Stop avoiding failure. You want to win in life? Stop avoiding the fact that you're probably going to lose along the way. You want to grow and become a better person? Then stop avoiding letting go of those sides of yourself that are no longer serving you. So let me introduce you now, like this micro shift principle, because one of the most common mistakes in a push season is attempting too many shifts simultaneously. Oh my gosh, I see this all the time. Like, what's the expression? Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't really even know what that means, but I guess back in the day, maybe they threw out bathwater. Now we just open up a drain. But one of the most common mistakes I see is people attempting too many shifts all at once. 3 new habits, 2 eliminated behaviors, a revised schedule, an overhauled morning routine, all at once, all urgent, all non-negotiable. And within 10 days, none of them have held because the cognitive and behavioral load was simply too heavy to sustain. The micro shift principle says this: identify your highest leverage shift, execute it with excellence, and let the momentum of that one change create the conditions for the next. So one shift done well is worth 10 shifts done poorly. Precision over volume every time. Remember this. You don't need to change everything to change everything. You do, however, need to change the right thing to create the one shift that unlocks the next level. And I was actually teaching a bar class last week, and as we were working on this move, I look over at all of, my members in the class, and I'm seeing, even though we're doing like a very slow intention move where we're really, resisting gravity, bringing our leg back down. I see this lady over in the corner just pumping out these reps. And I'm like, this move is about slow mind-body connection, intentionality, resistance. Form here matters more than everything. Form here matters more. It's going to matter more. Like, this isn't about the number of reps. I would rather, you can do 10 with proper form and get way better results than doing 100 with improper form. It's that same idea, precision over volume. The final letter is H, habits. This framework does not say positive, urgent shift in effort or in output or in intensity. It says positive, urgent shift in habits, P.U.S.H. And that is specifically intentional because effort is temporary. Output fluctuates. Intensity rises and falls with energy levels, seasons, and circumstances. But habits are behaviors that have been repeated consistently enough to become the default operating mode. Habits are durable. They're the infrastructure of your results. And when you shift the infrastructure, you shift the outcomes that infrastructure produces. Not for a week, not for a season, but as a new baseline. And that's the power of habits. This is why the target of a push season is never just the results. And thank goodness, right? process. The result is the evidence that the habit has taken hold. The habit is the thing worth pursuing because the habit is the thing that produces the result again and again, long after the push season ended and the elevated urgency has settled back into the rhythms of ordinary life. A push season, among other things, is a habit installation window. It's like upgrading your operating system so it runs smoother. When you fail to update the device, it starts acting weird and no longer functions properly. And you, my friend, are the same way. If you fail to update the operating system, you're going to start acting weird and no longer function properly. So the elevated urgency, the sharpened focus, the clear direction, all of it, you know what? It creates conditions that are unusually favorable for building a new behavioral pattern. You are more attentive than usual. You are more motivated than usual. The cost of inconsistency feels more real than usual. And I want you to really use that window. There's so much research on habit formation and how it consistently points to the power of 3 elements: a clear cue that triggers the behavior itself executed with as little friction as possible, and a reward, however small, that reinforces the pattern. So during your push season, design all 3 deliberately. What triggers your new habit? What removes the friction from executing it? And what is the immediate reward that tells your brain this pattern is worth repeating? So let's talk about that. Let's just say you have set a goal and you want to walk every single day. You want to hit 10,000 steps every single day. So what is going to trigger that new habit? Is it going to be you getting up and seeing your tennis shoes right outside your bedroom door? Is that going to trigger the thought? Or is it going to be getting home from work and seeing your tennis shoes and maybe your workout clothes, your walking clothes, in a nice little neat pile right next to where you're going to set your wallet and your keys or your purse down for the evening to trigger that thought of, oh yeah, here's what's next in my routine. Here is my habit. I get up, I put on my shoes, I go for a walk. I come home from work, I put down my things, I change, I go for a walk. So what is going to trigger the new habit? And what removes the friction from executing it? You know what the friction is. It's that little teeny tiny thing that makes it, I don't really want to grab. I don't want to do that right now. I don't want to grab that right now. I don't want to have to go out of my way for this or this or that. So you have to prepare. You have to prepare for the process, for the routine, for the habit. Again, the shoes are the visual that cue, or getting up or walking in the door and setting down your stuff. But what's going to reduce the friction? Having your workout clothes already ready. Maybe having dinner pre-planned and groceries pre-chopped, or, whatever the case may be. So that it reduces the friction and you're less likely to run into the excuses you're probably going to come up with for why you can just do it later. And if you know me, you know what I always say, later is a liar, so we don't want to go there. And then what is the immediate reward that tells your brain that this pattern is worth repeating? Well, it's coming home from that walk and already feeling accomplished first thing in the morning. Bam, 10,000 steps, done. I guess that would be like a really long walk, but who knows how much time you have to do it. Or even went on the walk and you got it done and you stuck to your plan and you kept the promise to yourself. That feels good. Coming home at the end of the day, dumping off your stuff, putting on your clothes, getting right back out the door and going for a walk. And you walk back in the door and you're not as stressed and you're not as moody and you're not as tense from the workday and you're ready to receive the incredible chaos of family life or whatever that might look like for you. But you just feel good. Don't leave habit formation to willpower alone, because willpower is a renewable but finite resource. Design the environment instead, the trigger and the reward, so that the habit runs on the infrastructure rather than inspiration, because inspiration, as we know, fluctuates and infrastructure holds. The whole goal of a push season is not to maintain push level intensity indefinitely. The goal is to exit the push season with a new habit baseline, a set of behaviors that were elevated during the push, and that through consistent repetition have now become your new normal. You pushed to install. Now the habit maintains without the push. That is the long game of P.U.S.H, not the sprint, the installation. You push to shift the habit, and the habit carries you forward when the push is done. You're not somebody who wants to walk. You are somebody who does walk. You're not somebody who wants to eat healthy. You are somebody who eats healthy. You're not someone who wants to build a successful business. You are building a successful business because you allowed that push season to be the installation process of the habits that are required to create the infrastructure that's going to sustain the results long after the push season is over. The goal of the push is not to run faster forever. It's to clear the path so you have a trail to walk on every single day. So how do you know when it's time for a push season? This is a question I get all the time. How do I know if it's time to push? Oh, you know, because you're sitting on the brink. You're sitting on the cusp. It's kind of like, it's kind of like standing on that tightrope. You're either going to take the next step or you're going to fall off, right? A push season does not announce itself with a notification ping. It begins with a decision, a quiet, clear, non-negotiable internal commitment that this is the season where the gap closes, where you finally do the thing, where the habit installs, where the next milestone stops being a destination on the horizon and becomes a result in hand. Here is what that decision looks like in practice. It looks like written commitment. You name the outcome, you name the shift, you name the duration, you name the floor, the minimum viable version of your new habit that you will honor even on the hardest days. You write all of it down, not in your phone, on paper. Yes, that vintage stuff. Because a written commitment has a different psychological weight than a thought you intend to act on. It also looks like a protected schedule. A push season requires protected time, non-negotiable windows where the priority habit is executed before anything else has the ability to negotiate for that space. Not after everything else is handled, before. Because everything else will always be there. And if your push habit waits until everything else is handled, guess what? It's going to be waiting forever. It looks like honest accounting. At the end of each week of your push season, sit down and answer 3 questions. Did I honor my commitment this week? Where did I fall short and why? What one adjustment do I make next week to close that gap? Not a lengthy post-mortem, explanation. 3 questions, honest answers, one adjustment, then you move. It looks like telling someone. Accountability is not weakness, it is wisdom. Tell one person, a mentor, a peer, a coach, a trusted colleague, a friend, your parents, your bestie, that you are in a push season and what you have committed to, not for applause, for the kind of loving, firm, external witness that makes it harder to quietly let yourself off the hook when the urgency fades like we know it's going to, and the couch becomes more compelling than the commitment. When the scroll is more entertaining than the basic mundane tasks that are going to get you where you're looking to go. This is what a push season looks like. Not a dramatic overhaul, not a personality, transplant, a written commitment, a protected schedule, and honest weekly accounting. And at least one person knows. Who knows what you're pushing towards. I want to leave you with 4 questions here today, one for each letter of the P.U.S.H. push acronym. Take these seriously. Write your answers down before you do anything else today, because the listener who answers these questions and acts on them in the next 24 hours is the one who will look back on this episode right here, this moment in time, as a turning point. So number 1, what is the specific compelling outcome your next push season is designed to produce? Not a category, a concrete result. I want you to name it with enough precision that you will know without question when you have achieved it. Number 2, what is the delay in entering your push season actually costing you? Specifically, measurably, honestly. For example, that cost, right? Every day that you are not out there acquiring new customers, building business, is every day that you're delaying income, which is then delaying, college tuition, whatever it might be going towards. Every day that you decide to not eat healthier, to not do the walk, to not work out, to not make the swap of the food is every day that you're delaying how much healthier you could be, how much more fit you could be. You're just sliding that future version of yourself. You're just pushing it away, out and out and out and out and out, to where the distance between the two of you is like miles and miles wide. What compound growth, relationship, credibility, or version of yourself is accumulating? It's in its absence while you wait for a better time. And number 3, what is the single highest leverage habit shift that, if executed with consistency and precision during your push season, would produce a disproportionate impact on your target outcome? Not 10 shifts, 1, the one that unlocks the others. And the final, how will you design the infrastructure of your new habit, the cue, the behavior, the reward, so that it runs on environment and design rather than willpower and inspiration alone? And also, while we're on the topic, what does your floor look like? The minimum version you will honor even on your hardest day. Answer those 4 questions. Write a push season commitment. Tell one person, and then, not eventually, not next Monday, not when the time is better, begin. I want to close with this. The next level of your business, your leadership, your life, it isn't waiting for a better version of your circumstances. It isn't waiting for more time, more resources, more favorable conditions. It is waiting for a version of you who has decided that the gap between knowing and doing closes right now in this season, with focused and intentional action directed at the specific habits that your next milestone requires. That is what a push is, not a feeling, not a burst of inspired energy, a positive, urgent shift in habits, deliberate, precise, and designed to install the behaviors that carry you forward long after the push season ends. Again, you already know what you need to do. You've known for a while. The only question that remains is whether today is the day that you decide that knowing is no longer enough. Your push season is here. How are you going to show up in it? That is my question for you. So thank you for being here. You guys, share this episode with someone who is standing at the edge of their next push season, because sometimes all a person needs to begin is the right framework and the right word at the right moment. This might be that moment for someone you know. If you love today's episode, share it on social, let your audience see you're in growth mode, leave a review, and most importantly, get this into the hands, ears, and hearts of a few people you know who might need this little push. Thank you again for joining me right here on Brewing Success, where growth is the mission, change is the reward, and progress is the goal.